Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I am putting together a comic book using all these components from the Aunty Vera We Can Be Heroes August kit. Now, the idea to make a comic book came to me as soon as I saw this amazing stamp by Hero Arts. This is called Abstract City, I think, or Abstract Skyline, something like that. I'm going to put the details down below, and I thought it would be amazing to have a comic book with the cityscape on the outside and then have perhaps Spiderman swinging in or something like that. So my brain was on fire and I thought, yeah, I'm going to try to make a comic book. So this will be part one. This turned out to be such a long project and such an enjoyable one too. So I hope you guys stick around for all three videos. So the first thing I did here was I reached for my Tim Holtz stamping platform. Definitely need a big stamp block with this one. This stamp is a 6x6, and so what I did was I went ahead and grabbed some watercolor paper. This is 190 GSM, and I cut it down to 6x6, which is the size of my stamp. Now, this comic book is going to be a strange size for a comic book, but that's only because that is the size of the stamp that I'm using. Now, if you want to make a traditional size one, you can. It just depends on the materials that you're using. Never be afraid to go with what you have. So this will be a 6x6 comic. So I'm showing you here, I'm using my Lawn Fawn black ink. It's one of my really good ones. It's a juicy black one, and I also left this in to show you that I sometimes don't stamp very well on the first stamp, which is why I have this repositionable stamping block, and it just allows you to re-ink and restamp and get a perfect image every time. I did go ahead and make a couple of these. My plan was to cut out each building and double it up with 3D foam tape so that the cityscape looked quite 3D. So you see me doing that here. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my fine tip scissors, and I'm going to cut each of the buildings out. From here, I went ahead and grabbed my alcohol markers. I have a mixture of Kaiser Craft and I have some Copics, and I have another one which is the Spectrum Noir, I think. I have a combination of cool gray and warm gray and blue gray, and I basically just did a swatch on the side there, and I just had a little bit of fun here shading buildings, doing different colors of gray, and yeah, I didn't realize how important different colors of gray was, so I really appreciated that I had a whole variety of different shades of gray to create this cityscape. I did also edge the sides of the building with my black alcohol marker, and I think it outlines it really nicely. Now, my shading technique is nothing special. I usually put down the first layer of the light color, then I go in around the outside with the darkest color, and then I go back in with my light color, blending it all in. Sometimes I did have a third medium color, so I'd alternate with that one as well, but usually I just had, you know, a light color and a dark color, and so I just went with what I had. I did sometimes mix the cool grays and the warm grays and the blue grays. That doesn't matter either. This is just for fun. I'm not a professional artist. And here I am just showing you, I buy my craft foam from the dollar store, and I just cut it in pieces as I need to, and I layer double-sided sticky tape as well as glue. And for large areas like this, this is what I use. For things like cards, I do use the roll tape of double-sided sticky foam, but for large areas like this, I don't want to worry about the tiny little squares or using so much of my foam roll. Some of the buildings have 3 layers of foam, and some of the buildings have 2, some have 1, and I left some as the original layer on the paper. So it's very multi-dimensional, and I love how it feels in my hand, and it looks really amazing in person. One thing I wanted to show you here is after I stamped one of the images with black ink, I went ahead and stamped with Versamark, and then I added my super fine embossing powder and I heat set that. And I actually love how the raised edges create an extra dimension here. So you can see on the left hand side and the bottom one, those are the ones that were heat embossed. The one on the right is just stamped, and there is a difference. And if you want to go that extra step, go ahead and heat emboss before you cut out all the buildings. So now I'm moving on to the wall crawler Spider-Man die. This is really cool. I go ahead and I cut him out using watercolor paper, and I just cut a whole lot out because I just wanted to have some fun here. I wanted to paper piece as well as color in. The die is really easy to use. It comes out very easily with my little poker brush. So I reach for my alcohol markers, and I'm just going for just straight red and black, and I'm using both the image on the packaging as well as an image I got off the net, just to try and figure out how he's crouched and where his suit colors mix. So because his hands are over his legs, some of it's red, some of it's blue, and I want it to be quite accurate, so I go ahead and start coloring in here. This was very therapeutic. I enjoy coloring when I don't worry about shading, and so I'm just putting up the picture that I'm copying from on the side there for you to see. The way that Spider-Man is crouching, it looks like he's coming up the wall, so his hands look quite large just because his hand is the closest to you. So I wanted to really find out the areas of the shading where some of the shading needed to be. So for the areas of shading, I just went over those areas once again once the initial layer had dried, and it creates just a little bit of extra darkness. Once again, I'm just using the one color of red. You can see there I'm going on the edges to make them look just a little bit darker. After that, I did play along with paper piecing, so I had this red and white piece of paper which I played around with and added some blue to it. And you can still see the polka poking through, but that's okay. I then also cut Spider-Man out of black cardstock, and I outlined with the white gel pen, and this looks awesome. So it reminds me of the dark side of Spider-Man in movie number 3 of Tobey Maguire's version of Spider-Man. I then wanted to experiment one more time. I cut Spider-Man out of red cardstock this time, and I colored in his blue tights, and I think it's a lovely look. It's a little bit different. The red is much more stark and quite noticeable when you compare it to the red of the Copic, but I do love them both. Just two different ways of doing it. If you didn't have red cardstock, or if you didn't have a red alcohol marker, you can choose which way you wanted. It's depending on the supplies that you have. I then found double-sided glitter paper, and I thought, well, let's have a look. And so I created a silver and black Spider-Man, and he's really cool. He's the one my son loves. And so that's for another character. If you wanted to create another character for Spider-Man, that's his shimmery, blingy side, perhaps. And with my black pen here, I'm just going through the embossed areas on the die. They really make a difference, so it's good highlighting them. They add more character. So here are all my Spider-Mans. I love the green guy. The green guy just looks like a lizard. He doesn't really look like Spider-Man, so he can pass off as another character almost. and I did a black and white polka as well. For the black ones, I decided to leave the eyes in and not punch them out, and so I painted them white and they look good. But yeah, I have a whole lot of Spiderman to play with, and look how amazing they look against that cityscape. These will make awesome birthday cards for young boys, so there's another project right there if anyone is interested in some ideas. But definitely that combination of the stamp plus the Spider-Man die is awesome. All right, so we're going to continue on. We're making a comic book, remember? So I'm cutting some American Crafts cardstock down to 6 inches by 12 and scoring in the middle. So that's a 12 by 6 scored in at 6. I am wearing a white jumper today, so I have to be really careful because I'm about to start spraying with this Heidi Shine black spritz. And it is so black, but once it soaks through the paper, and remember I am using white cardstock, so it accepts the spray quite well, but it warps the paper also a little bit. And so what I'm doing is I've sprayed it to the top half, and then as it dries it looks quite light. And so I thought, instead of looking like a dark sky night, it kind of looks like smoky gray. So then I thought, well, maybe it looks like there's a fire back there. So how about I try adding some of that Brushos color crystals? And remember, this color is red. So I added the crystal on top, sprayed some more black, then sprayed some more water, then added another layer of Brusho. And it created this like thick, almost glutinous kind of red color. It was quite amazing. You could see how much it seeped through the back here, but I really enjoyed this. And so what I left it there, added some more red at the bottom, then added some more water, and it looks like there's fire coming out from behind the buildings. You'll see in a minute when I put the cityscape stamp back on. It just looks like there's fire with billowing smoke and red flames, and I think this is the greatest thing ever. I didn't think I was going for this, but I loved how this turned out. This was just me going on the fly. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the paper here, backing it up with another 6 by 12 piece of black cardstock from American Crafts, making sure that everything is burnished down really well. Then what I'm doing is I'm grabbing some cityscape here that pre-stamped and pre-colored, and I'm cutting them down to 3 by 6. Then I'm adding them to the cover. Now, because it looked quite blotchy, what I did decide to do was add some of this Mod Podge. This is gloss, and I think this made all the difference. It took out the splotchiness and it evened out the blobs of red and black. It also made the cover quite sturdy, and it also made the cover quite shiny, which is what a comic book should look like, I think. One thing I noticed was that the Brushos was coming off, so I decided to paint the cityscape first, and then I'll go over the black and red on the top there, and it will spread it, and this is how it evens out the background and colors in a little bit of the whiteness as well, which is showing from the cardstock. It also leaves a little bit of a red haze on top of some of the buildings that I've touched. I like it. It looks very inclusive. So at this stage, it looks like there is a huge disaster. The city is on fire. What are we going to do? We need superheroes to save the day. So please come back for part 2 to meet the superheroes and find out how they save the day.